Hey, Slater Crusaders, America's the greatest country in the world. Thanks for being here. We said about a year ago when the left and the Democrats started talking about domestic terrorism and how the biggest threat to the American homeland are domestic terrorists. And we're like, what are you talking? Who are they? They were talking about you. I told you that a year ago. They're talking about you. And I got the latest example of it. Today's example. This is the Department of Justice. They wrote this memo, the opening paragraph. In recent months, there's been a disturbing spike in harassment, intimidation, and threats of violence against school administrators, board officials, teachers, blah, blah, blah. While spirited debate among policy matters is protected under our Constitution, that protection does not extend to threats of violence or efforts to intimidate individuals based on their views. So this is super interesting. Seemingly random Department of Justice memo talking about local school boards? Like, what's the Department of Justice talking about school boards? And the FBI, we're bringing the FBI into this. What is happening here? Where did this come from? It is a response to the National School Board Association, which of course is a very far left group. They wrote a long, it's like 7 or 9 page letter to the President of the United States. I just want to share a couple of the quotes here. Again, this is the National School Board Association. They said, to the President, America's public schools and its education leaders are under an immediate threat, coupled with attacks, oh goodness, against school board members for approving policies for masks to protect the health and safety of students and school employees. Many public officials are also facing physical threats because of propaganda purporting the false inclusion of critical race theory within classroom instruction and curricula. This propaganda continues, despite the fact that critical race theory is not taught in public schools. Real quick sidebar on that one, because that's hilarious. This is a little trick they do with the critical race theory thing. They'll be like, critical race theory is not taught in schools. That's a law school thing. They teach in law schools, not kindergarten. Like, technically, yes, you're not teaching our kindergartners what they teach in law school, as you call that very specific thing, critical race theory. But the essence of what critical race theory is taught all the way down to our 5th graders. But anyway, that's a different show. Here's the key. As these acts of malice, violence, and threats against public school officials have increased, the classification of these heinous actions could be the equivalent to a form of domestic terrorism and hate crimes. What do you say, Department of Justice, huh? You want to call these people domestic terrorists? Amazing. Now, I read, this is a great example of a little gaslighting in front of I just read the National Association of School Boards letter, okay? That's an actual quote from it. I'm not paraphrasing, that's the quote. The Associated Press this morning did a fact check, and they said, contrary to false claims circulating online, the National School Board Association did not ask President Joe Biden to label protesting parents domestic terrorists. I just read it. Like, what are you talking about? Here's another line. How about that? Maybe that other line didn't quite do it for you. How about this one? The National School Board Association requests that such review examine appropriate enforceable actions against those crimes and acts of violence under the Gun-Free School Zones Act, the Patriot Act, in regards to domestic terrorism. So there it is again. But no, they're not calling you domestic terrorists. So what are they talking about? That's the thing, like, what crimes? Like, what a weird thing. Like, what are these crimes and acts of violence that they're even talking about? They actually give some examples. Now, this is my job to debunk these things. You can't be expected to do this. You have your own job. You have your own life to live. But even just, you don't have to do research. Just think for a second. If some conservative or anyone bombed a school board meeting, you probably would have heard of that by now. Don't you think it probably would have made the news if a bomb went off during a school board meeting? If someone tried to burn down the local school board, if someone opened fire at a school board meeting, you probably would have heard of that. I haven't, because it's not happened. I've heard of no violence at school board meetings. Even if like someone ran up and attacked a school board member, like punched a school board member in the face, you would have heard about that. None of that's happened. So you don't even need to do research into this. It's just common sense. And they're talking about a spike in violence. A spike in, check this out from CNN. This is amazing. CNN, they wrote this today. U.S. records highest increase in nation's homicide rate in modern history, CDC says. Wow, okay, so we got a largest increase in our homicide rate in the country. That's amazing. In the world, or in history. Incredible. Here's one of the quotes from the story. This is the director of the American Public Health Association. He said the rise in homicides has occurred parallel to a recent rise in overall violence, hate, tensions, political divisions, and anger displayed in communities across the country. Quote, we're literally seeing in front of our eyes at school board meetings and public events. What? See how coordinated this is? I've never in my entire life heard anything about violence and school boards. And now you have CNN talking about homicide and somehow weaving school boards into it? The violence from school boards? Just to be clear, there's been no homicides committed at a school board meeting. That's the first thing. But why even bring up school board meeting? How could your local school board meeting have anything to do with the rise in homicides in Chicago? What does your school board meeting have anything to do with the 40 people who were shot this weekend in Chicago, who were all shot nowhere near a school board meeting? So you see what they're trying to do there? They're trying to convince other people that you, speaking to the school board of your kid's school, you're acting like a terrorist. And they're doing that to silence you. And they're making it all up. They're making it all up. They've done it before, of course. Quick sidebar, and I'll get back to this story. A couple times, our president has tweeted about the rise in the murder of trans women. One of the tweets, he talked about 37. There's been 37 murders of transgendered people or whatever. Right? So if you take the time to go through all the people that he's talking about, they have nothing to do with the fact that they're transgendered. They're all either domestic abuse crimes or drug-related crimes or random crimes. One of these transgender people was in their car, was lured by a 14-year-old girl into a back alley where two men killed this person and stole their car. It had nothing to do with them being transgender. Some of them are attempted robberies. One was a hit and run by a driver driving on the wrong side of the highway. So you got a transgender person driving in the car, some drunk driver or whatever is coming the wrong side of the highway, hits the transgender person in the car, they die, and Joe Biden talks about how that's a transgendered murder. But it doesn't. A lot of these are prostitutes, people in the sex trade. One transgender person was killed by a customer who thought that he was a woman and wasn't. And the customer got mad and killed them. So maybe that one is sort of transgender related. But none of the other ones have anything to do with being trans. And then also the president made a point about, black and brown transgender people are being killed. Yeah, the black and brown transgender people are all killed by black and brown people. Okay, so this made up fake crime spike hysteria has been made up before, right? So back to the school board. The National Association of School Boards, it gives a list of the violence that has happened at school board meetings. Okay? So I'm giving their examples. I just want to be clear here. I didn't cherry pick peaceful examples to disprove them, and they come back and be like, no, but look at these violent ones. I'm using their examples. Okay? This is their most dramatic. In Virginia, an individual, but it'd be like all dramatic. In Virginia, an individual was arrested, another man was ticketed for trespassing, and a third person was hurt. Now, I don't know what the hurt means. Like, wow, how about a little detail? Like, did the person trip and fall or stub their toe? Or what do you mean they were hurt? Were they emotionally hurt? They were emotionally grieved by what took place? So I don't even know what that even means. But what are they talking about? They're talking about Loudoun County. We actually played video of this meeting when it happened. Loudoun County, Virginia, one of the most woke districts in the country outside D.C. They were having a meeting about transgender stuff. 250 people signed up to speak during the public comment section of the public school board meeting. 250 people signed up. I think it was after the 51st person, the school board ended the public comment section. Like, we're not doing it anymore, we're done. People got rightfully upset. The school board left, right? And people stuck around. Like, this is crazy. You can't just end the public comment and end the meeting. What are we talking about? So people stuck around and they started singing the national anthem. That's why we played the video, because they were singing the national anthem. Security comes and they start pushing people out of the room, like, okay, you gotta go, right? You have to go home, but you can't stay here. Like, the school meeting's over, right? And a couple people stayed behind, they wouldn't leave. And one of them got arrested for it. That's what happened. The person didn't murder anyone. They didn't assault. The school board wasn't even there. They left. The school board members. That's the big arrest. And again, I don't know what happened to the person who got hurt. That's their proof. That's the most dramatic one. Like, oh, there's so much violence, a spike in violence, and it's so awful, it's terrible. Oh, do you have an example? Oh, yeah, in Virginia, someone got arrested, and someone got ticketed for trespassing, and it was just so awful. That's what happened. They ended the meeting early, and they didn't leave the room. They didn't leave the room, and they got, like, who cares? I don't know what happened to the guy. I bet they just, like, whatever, just go home, right? And this is like the rise spike in violence and homicides? Give me a break. One school board meeting that they quoted, they cited, it ended because people weren't wearing masks. So the school board's like, we're going home. And that was them. These threats, this is back to the National Association of School Board letter to the president. These threats and acts of violence are affecting our nation's democracy at the very foundational levels, causing school board members to resign immediately and or discontinue their service after their respective terms. Now, they have a footnote at the end of that. They link to this story. I just want to make this very, very clear. I'm not finding some random person to disprove their point. This is the one that they prove. They point to. All right? It's the story of a guy, John White. He's a school board member. I think it's Wilson County. Yeah, Wilson County. That's east of Nashville. It's Lebanon, Tennessee. Okay? It's as red as you can ever get in Lebanon, Tennessee. So the article that they link to in the footnotes is this article right here from the Tennessean. John White, Wilson County School Board District 3 member John White has resigned. White cited concerns about too much time away from his family. My family was being impacted and I had to prioritize them above all else, White said in a text message. John White did not resign because he was threatened by school board, by people in the community because he was promoting transgender critical race theory ideology. There's no critical race theory in the Lebanon School District. It's as red as it can get. He left because he just wanted to spend time with his family. He just didn't want to do the job anymore. That's the story they cite. And we can go through example. You get the idea here. Nothing that these people are talking about matches up with reality. If anything, you got to go back to the anti-police Black Lives Matter protests that happened at school board meetings that shut down meetings because these activists would go up there and chant the whole time and no one could talk and the whole thing. My favorite criticism against parents at school board meetings, it happens from time to time. A mom will get up to the microphone and she'll read this incredibly, sickeningly sexual explicit material to the school board. And the media will talk about how wildly inappropriate it is to speak to the school board in this language. And look at this crazed, psychotic mother getting up there talking about all these horrible things. And what they don't say in the article, the media doesn't talk about, is the mom is reading the assigned book to her 5th grader. Right, like, there's the text, like, the mom didn't just go on a rant about anal sex. The mom read from a book that her 5th grader is forced to read about anal sex. The one time I got in trouble for anything I ever said on the radio was the other day I was reading through all this mandated material for 3rd graders, 5th graders, 6th graders, and it's just like it's the most deranged, perverted. Like I'm not, and I know you're thinking, no, Slater, I could think it's a pretty deranged, perverted things. No. I'm talking like bestiality, incest, like horrible things for 5th graders. And I read it on the radio, and my boss was like, you shouldn't read it on the radio. And I'm like, yeah, I know, but our fifth grade, people need to know what is being assigned to our fifth graders. Anyway. You know what they're doing here. There's no real violence. But they're threatening you. They're threatening you. Your comments, your tone is not welcome here. So we're going to get the FBI involved? We're going to start calling you domestic terrorists? This is a big deal. You cannot allow the left to turn dissent or disagreement into domestic terrorism. When free speech is shut down on a local level by threats of sicking the FBI on you because of your tone, that is a huge problem that transcends any issue that is even being debated here, right? Does that make sense? Like, it's sort of like the vaccine mandates. Like, it's not really about the vaccine mandates. It's about the government telling citizens that you need to do a thing in order to be allowed permission to enter into polite society. That's the issue. It's bigger than the vaccine. It's the same thing here. The federal government is going to label you a domestic terrorist for engaging in a public comment period at a local school board meeting for your child's school. Who could possibly be okay with this? Most people don't know about it, which is why I always end every segment with spread the word. I want to tell you about our app once I get my handy dandy clicker here. The app, it's totally free. It's in the App Store for your phone and on your TV as well. Super grateful wherever you're watching us, but you can take us wherever you go. And the reason I love this app so much is how easy it is. It looks just like this on your phone. There's no signing in. There's no making an account. There's no ads. You don't need to wait 60 seconds before you do anything. It's super easy, super streamlined. It couldn't be easier. Like, here's everyone's. There's Bill, there's Dana, there's Buck, there's Jesse, and there's me. Like, and then you got a bunch of other specials and open mic and all the other things that we have there. Like, you click it. Here, let's do Dana. Boom. You click it, play, and there's your show. And there you go. Like, what could possibly be easier than that? And then you can close your phone too, and it still continues to play in the background, which is convenient and good for saving your battery life. Totally free in the App Store. Give it a quick download right now. The First TV. Spread the word. Hi, Slater Crusaders. How about we take one step further into our dystopian future as we analyze where we're headed right now, and you let me know if you think this is a fine direction. Everything's fine, no problem here at all. This is from the New York Post. The U.S. federal government is secretly, that's the first red flag, when the U.S. federal government is secretly doing anything. Secretly ordering Google and other search engines to track and provide data on anyone who searches certain terms through what's called keyword warrants. So have you ever heard that term before? A keyword warrant. What in the world is this? The only reason we know about this, let me back it up. We've known about this being done twice, but there was an accidentally unsealed warrant that Forbes, some writer at Forbes found, that reveals that this is far more frequent than we ever thought. A keyword warrant. Okay, put a pause here. Before we go on, this is a perfect example of what we've been talking about all week. We talked about it on Monday, we talked about it on Tuesday, we talked about it yesterday, every single day. And it's perfect timing. How does it happen like that? How do we talk about this seemingly random principle and then it applies to a big news story later in the week? Alas, that's how it works. The depravity of man. Understanding the depravity of man is all you need to understand about anything. We are born sinful. Someone asked me the other day, because we're talking about this a lot, why are you so down on people? It's like, why are you so down on people? People are really good deep down. Now, if someone was able to put some sort of computer chip in your brain, which, well, Elon Musk can, but some sort of recording device in your brain that could keep track of all of your thoughts, everything you think, not just the thing you say, not just the things you type on Twitter or Facebook, but everything you think. And then at the end of every day, broadcast it over the radio or printed it all up on Facebook and sent it out to all your friends. Would you be proud of that? Would you really, like all your thoughts deep down, would you be proud of everything you think about? Of course not. And you can also look at little kids, right? Little kids kick and scream when they don't get their way. Little babies don't obey their parents. They don't even know why they don't obey their parents. That's what they do. Folly is bound in the heart of a child. We've all been to Target or your retail establishment of choice and have seen a 5-year-old kicking and screaming, having a tantrum on the ground. That 5-year-old's probably never seen their mommy like lay prostrate on the ground kicking and screaming. But they know they do it. They know how to do it because that's what kids do. Because that's how we're all born. And we need to raise kids to be civilized, right? This is the depravity of man. Whenever a privacy issue comes up, all the leftists, nearly every liberal, and even most conservatives will say, I have nothing to hide. No big deal. Who cares? I got nothing to hide. Sure, you want to search everyone's bank accounts and monitor every transaction? No problem. I have nothing to hide. You want to monitor everywhere I travel, everywhere I drive? No problem. I got nothing to hide. You want to track where all the gun owners are? Sure, fine, whatever. I got nothing to hide. It's like, no, I know, you're great. I get it. That's not the point. It's not about you. It's about them. Don't trust them. You think they're good people? They're not. They frame these things, saying, this is used to catch child molesters. Right? They just do that to get you to agree to it. And then it will always be used against you for reasons that you never would have agreed to on the front end. And they know that. Or if you want to give them a little more benefit of the doubt, fine. Maybe they have good intentions in the beginning, but it will always morph and transform into something much, much worse. And this is an example of that. The earliest case we know of a keyword warrant was in 2017. A Minnesota judge signed off on an order asking Google to provide data on any user within the city of Edina who searched for a fraud victim's name. Okay, so how did that work? There's a fraud victim. We got to find out who defrauded them. Okay, so the government goes to Google and says, hey, Google, we want everybody who's Googled this person's name, anyone from Edina who's Googled this person's name in the last time period. Okay, well, let's have 10 people Googled their name. Great, we're going to go talk to those 10 people and find out if any of them defrauded this person, right? That's what that is. In Wisconsin, this is 2019. Police were searching for a man who they think was sex trafficking a minor. So they ordered Google to provide any information on users, including account names, IP addresses, cookie IDs, that searched the victim's name, 2 spellings of the mother's name, and her address over 16 days throughout the year. All right, so again, anyone who Googled this person's name, that's a keyword warrant. The third use, this warrant requested information on anyone who searched for an address of an arson victim. Right, so who committed arson on this person? Well, we don't know, but let's find anyone who Googled their name or Googled their address, who was also a witness in the government's racketeering case against R. Kelly. That's a little weird part of that whole story. Right, does that make sense? So that's what that is. Now, it's very easy to look at these stories, especially if you come from a law enforcement background or whatever, and say, Slater, come on. This is about police catching the bad guys. Okay. Also know that this is a brand new tool in the hands of the government. They're in the hands of people, and people, depravity of man. Not only that, but now they're operating inside of a system that has no accountability. Systems don't. That is bound to be corrupted. The search terms are going to get more and more broad. And the terms are going to get more and more benign. Right? So it's not going to be, we're just looking for people in this city who Google this name over this time period. It's going to be anyone in the country who Googles these broad things are going to be put on a list of domestic terrorists. And it'll start off with things that no one will bother about, like pipe bombs. Anyone who Googles pipe bombs, they're going to be put on a list. And then it's going to be more political things, and it's always going to be the fringe things, right? It'll be QAnon. Anyone who Googles QAnon, you're going to be put on a list. Then it's going to be more and more normal things, anti-vax, truth of COVID, Project Veritas. You see how this works? Whatever terms they deem to be problematic, that's what they're going to put the kibosh on. There's a fourth warrant that we know of, but this is how vague this warrant is. It's an this is what it's called, and this is all we know. Application by the United States for a search warrant for Google accounts associated with 6 search terms and 4 search dates. That's it. What terms? We don't know. This is a First Amendment freedom of speech issue. This is limiting and chilling speech, chilling what you Google, right? What you search for on the internet for fear of the FBI calling you. And it's a Fourth Amendment issue, search and seizure. Is your Google search government property? Now listen, if someone's a suspect in a trial, then the government can go to Google and ask for that person's search history, just like they could get a warrant for anything else, any of their filing cabinets in their home or something. That's fine, no problem whatsoever. But casting this giant net for any keyword, no. Why? Because I don't trust them. Why? Because of the depravity of man and the unaccountability of systems. Not to mention, this has all been done in secret. The only reason we really know about this is because there was a warrant that was accidentally unsealed by the Department of Justice. Some reporter found it, and then they sealed it back up again. So we're not even supposed to know this is a thing. You don't think it'll be abused? Nothing is worth infringing on your rights. Everyone needs to get this straight. Because once you hand them over for any reason, they're gone. You'll never get them back. It's a miracle that our founders even recognized these God-given rights and government-protected rights in the first place. And we're going to hand them over to a bunch of scoundrels in D.C.? Once you do, it's gone. So the only question is now what search terms a couple of years from now, and remember this term, keyword warrant. You'll hear about it again. So make some predictions. What words do you think will be keyword warrant worthy in the next couple of years? It may not even be that long. What will you not be allowed to Google? Or you'll be allowed to Google. You'll just get a call from the FBI as a result. Maybe, just to tie it into our last segment, maybe when's the next school board meeting? We'll get you a knock on the door. True story. Mike Slater, spread the word. Hey, Slater Crusaders, this next segment ties in perfectly to what we've been talking about the first 2 segments, just government power over you, specifically in our school boards, but government and different entities colluding against you. It's unbelievable. By the way, our special tomorrow is Blue State Survival Guide. So if you live in a blue state or you live in a blue enclave, even in a red state like in a city, then how do you make it? How do you work it with the government colluding against you? Let's focus on our school boards first. This is Senator Josh Hawley talking about the segment we just did about the Department of Justice labeling parents potentially domestic terrorists.
I think parents across this country are going to be stunned to learn, that if they show up at a local school board meeting, by the way, where they have the right to appear and be heard, where they have the right to say something about their children's education, where they have the right to vote, and you are attempting to intimidate them, you are attempting to silence them, you are attempting to interfere with their rights as parents, and yes, with their rights as voters. This is wrong. This is dangerous.
Barry Ferris here. He's the host of Culture Shift, the Barry Ferris Show, and a former candidate for governor of Colorado. Barry, how are you, sir?
Hey, good morning. Great to be with you, Mike.
Great to talk to you again. So we talked about how this whole thing's just not true, right? There is no violence at these school board meetings. It's totally made up. If there is any rabble-rousing, it can very calmly be taken care of by local security, let alone even local police. Yet we're federalizing this. We're bringing the FBI into this whole scenario. What's really going on?
Oh, it's unbelievable. Well, it's an attempt to silence what's becoming effective. These moms from all over and dads from all over the country have finally become awakened to the horror of critical race theory and white fragility and a emphasis on slavery that's not even an accurate historical understanding. And so these moms and dads have learned some of this, and then this overt sexuality at such a young age, and these parents are saying we are upset, and so they're coming in armed, and in some cases they lose their cool. And it's when I say armed, they're not armed with guns or anything like that. They're armed with facts, and they're communicating effectively. And I think it's scaring some of these board members who have been used to being able to just get their way and have their way.
It's amazing the collusion, as I mentioned in the intro. You have the local school boards, which are run by the local school unions. Then you have the National Association of School Boards, who we spoke about in the last segment, writing a letter to the president, which then quickly gets turned into a memo from the Department of Justice, bringing in the FBI. And it's so hard not to be one of these moms being like, whoa, whoa, whoa. You know what I mean? Like, wait, what's happening? What are you doing? What? Like, why am I what's the big deal? What are we talking? Like, this is so crazy. It's like this Goliath, this behemoth, just raining down on mothers. And as you said, Death, just to silence them and shut them up. I say all that.
It's unbelievable.
What power does the FBI even have when there's no violence even taking place?
No, this is an overreach of government authority that's off the charts. And I'm hopeful that some of those FBI agents will think twice. Eventually, there's going to be a Republican president. And every one of those that are overreaching in this case and actually intimidating U.S. citizens and using the power of the sword in this way, which is against what America is all about, should be held accountable. And I'm hoping that senators will start to rise up now and inflict some fear. These FBI agents are off the charts. I mean, there is no role whatsoever for them to be in a school board meeting. You got a school board employee or board member or parent that gets a little out of hand, maybe they're a little too excited, you get local security. It's super simple. This is not a federal armed and equipped with all kinds of not just ammo and capability, but the law behind you, so you're sort of exempt. That is not the role of the FBI. They should not be involved in local schools at all.
That's crazy. So as you're talking, I'm just daydreaming about how so hypersensitive and freak out everyone is all the time. Like, if there were violence, like we can imagine a world where there was violence at school board meetings. Maybe there are bombs or fighting, like actual fight, like fists being thrown or guns being fired and people dying. I mean, like maybe then we could have a conversation about what we need to do. Right. We're not even close. It's like, what are we even, we're light years away from any violence even pretending to have occurred. It's so bonkers, but I think that's part of COVID reaction too.
We've entered a la-la land that is unrecognizable from even 3 years ago. The federal government does not have this power. Could you imagine if this was all in reverse? So let's just go back 3 years, and Trump was using the FBI to go into school board meetings and intimidate the liberal leftists and endeavor to cause them harm. Do you think people would respond to that? Do you think the press might do anything about that? And so it's just an amazing thing. I mean, it's just such a violation of everything that made America great, which is, look, you're free to express yourself. You're not supposed to be violent. You're supposed to do that peaceably, but you're free to express yourself in any way you want. And at a board meeting, if tempers flare a little bit, you're not hitting anybody or harming anyone, you certainly shouldn't be chased down by the FBI, for goodness sakes. Maybe security can come up and say, hey, don't jump up on the desk. But that I agree with. I mean, you need to do it in a decorous way, but goodness gracious, this is off the charts.
Here's the closest to what you just hypothetically just talked about with Trump. Trump, I guess, said he should or would or could or might send the FBI to stop the riots in Portland. And David French, used to be conservative at the time, said that is the death throes of local autonomy. And now, about FBI and school board meetings, he thinks it's good and proper and a fine thing to do and all the rest. So there's your hypocrisy there. I want to pivot just a second, Barry, because I know you've been talking a lot about vaccine mandates in schools, and it's any day now. The FDA is going to approve this vaccine for 5 to 11-year-olds. California's already said that as soon as it is approved, then it's going to be required for kindergarten up and for all kids, which is psychotic.
Absurd.
Talk to me about the religious exemption aspect of this, which may or may not be allowed.
Well, the religious exemption is allowed whether they want it to be or not. They'd have to actually get it overturned at the Supreme Court level, and that's not going to happen. What's happened, though, is there are layers of judges who have basically denied what is, in fact, by fact, a religious exemption. And there's lots of organizations like Liberty Institute and those folks that are doing great things to try to fight on behalf of those with religious exemption. But a religious exemption is real simple. It's not up to the employer or the government to decide whether or not you have one. You have one if you say you have one. If you have a sincerely held religious belief against abortion or against aborted fetal cell research, then, and if as a result of that, you have a belief that supporting anything connected to the vaccine violates your beliefs, then you have a religious exemption. And what we've done is just rolled over and allowed for these employers to intimidate and fire people, and all of that, in my opinion, is unlawful. And but unfortunately, we need some courts to rise up. Yeah. I mean, we were founded on religious freedom. This is the first part of the First Amendment. And it's just absurd that we're even talking about whether or not somebody's going to grant a religious exemption. It's crazy.
Yeah, I saw a funny meme of the guy signing the Declaration of Independence, our founding fathers, and at the top it says something like, we all know this goes out the window if there's a virus, right? It's like, no, that still applies, this Constitution. On the religious exemption, is the only religious exemption, but let me say this first. I saw a teacher at New York City. She applied for a religious exemption, and they gave her the form back, and it just said denied, and there was no reason why it was denied.
No explanation.
Her religious exemption was denied. And it's like, well, that, as you said, that's not how that works.
Right.
Is there, beyond the aborted fetal cell line, which is the latest reveal from Project Veritas, by the way, that these were used in the testing of at least the Pfizer vaccine. I think my understanding is all the vaccines
all
except for AstraZeneca. Yeah, except for AstraZeneca, which is not in America. So, so other than that, is there another religious reason, or is there another reason why a religious person may not want to be forced to take a vaccine?
Oh, absolutely. I'll give it to you. I believe God's the creator of my being. I believe that the Holy Spirit abides within me. This is a very popular religion. It's been around for about 2,000 years. It's called the Christian faith. And as a result of the Holy Spirit being in me, I believe that in order to keep it holy, I need to not inject foreign substances in me. And so as a consequence of having a desire to please God, I keep foreign substances out of my body and rely upon my natural immunity.
Now, someone will come back and say, "Oh, Barry, that's ridiculous."
Go ahead.
Sure, they'll come back and be like, "Oh, that's ridiculous. You drink coffee, you eat food, you put foreign substance, you've taken other vaccine, blah, blah, blah." And I guess my rebuttal, and see if you agree, is none of your business.
Well, the reality is that the argument that the government has a role of deciding whether or not you have been consistent with your religious belief has already been overturned by the Supreme Court. That was in 1983. And the Supreme Court said the government, employers do not have the authority to determine whether or not you're consistent with your religion. You can effectively have a religious exemption because you say so.
Do you remember what that case was called by any chance offhand?
Oh, I can look it up for you. I'm going to have to get it to you. Unfortunately, I don't have it right now.
No, that's okay. No, that's okay. That's okay. I want to. I'm going to find that. We'll do some more research on that.
And that is, by the way, you can find that on the public website that's helping defend United Airlines. They have it in there.
Okay. Very good. Barry Farah, Barry Farah on the Twitter. Barry Farah Show. All the rest. Barry, good to talk to you, sir. Thank you.
Hey, great to be on the show. Take care, Mike. Have a good day.
Appreciate you. True story. Mike Slater. Spread the word. Hey, Slater Crusaders. So the senator, whoever, just announced that they have reached an agreement on raising the debt ceiling. Hooray! And crisis averted, whatever. We haven't talked a ton about this. We have, of course. We haven't talked a ton because it's so super frustrating. We have a $3.5 trillion bill that's really closer to $7 trillion that they keep saying is $0. And then they're going to settle on $2.5 trillion and then pat themselves on the back for a great compromise and And not even worse than that, they'll come back and bemoan about the great austerity that we have in America, where we're only spending $2.5 trillion on a bill and not the proposed $7 trillion, which is what we really need to be a great country again. It's insane. Matt Welch is here. He's the one of the editors at large at reason.com, of course. Matt, how are you, sir?
I'm doing great. How are you? Thanks for having me.
Very, very good. What do you make of the big agreement that's been reached?
This was zero surprise. Joe Biden earlier this week on Monday, I believe, accused Republicans who were not immediately agreeing to raising the debt ceiling of trying to destroy the country. Try to get out of the way, he said. And we're trying to save the country. If you're not willing to do it the way we're going to do it, you are destroying the country and you need to be taken out of the way. I'm really glad that we changed the tone in Washington from all that blustery, divisive rhetoric from the previous president. Yeah. There was no drama associated with this. We've known since basically November 2014 that we're never going to have another debt ceiling crisis. No, we did, because when Republicans retook the Senate, Mitch McConnell immediately said, okay, no more of this debt ceiling shenanigans. It kind of bit us in the foot last time with Ted Cruz in 2013. We're not going to have this anymore. So it's just they suspended the debt ceiling pretty much during the entirety of the Trump administration. Just said, go ahead, do whatever you want. So we knew we're going to reach an agreement and then move on to the next thing, which is to expand the size and scope of government in a way we've never seen before in American history. So good luck, America.
I read the other day that when FDR expanded the government, he had a 200-seat majority in the House and like a 40-seat majority in the Senate. And when LBJ expanded his Great New Deal, it was the same thing, right? It was like a 180-seat majority. Some ballpark figures, right? And Biden is doing it with a 10-seat majority in the House and a 50-50 split in the Senate, of course, with the tiebreaker of Kamala. So this is a massive expansion of government with the slimmest of majorities in American history. Not how it's supposed to work. Huh?
And also, it's done while Biden's poll numbers are already underwater. I haven't seen a comparative with Trump, who never had good poll numbers really, but it's pretty bad already. So he doesn't have anything like a mandate. People forget he beat Trump in the popular vote by a comfortable margin, a lot closer electorally, but that margin was not. It was largely comprised of people who voted third party the time before. They voted for libertarians or Greens or whoever. Those people voted overwhelmingly for Biden. They didn't vote for him because they liked him. They voted for him because they're like, okay, well, I don't like the other guy. I don't want him to win. But that wasn't a mandate to go great society on steroids. That's what they're trying to do and push it by the slimmest of margins. And let's just think about how anti-democratic, with a small d, this all is. No one's going to read the bill. It's all being negotiated by about 7 people, and they'll just walk out and boom, $3.5 trillion here, maybe another $1 trillion for infrastructure, bills that have not been read at all and have had no amendments, no debate about various things. My God, what are we going to discover they tucked in those things after they're passed?
That's wild. It's so super discouraging, Matt, right? Like, what do we do with that? And then you look at the Republicans. Now, I read this from a super far left source. I don't know if this is true at all, but I don't doubt it, that Mitch McConnell's voted to raise the debt ceiling like 32 times, whatever it is, right? It's a lot. So the Republicans are no hope, as you just talked about. So what the heck is the hope here?
Well, I saw George Will give a talk last week in Washington, and he tried to give the case for optimism in the face of all of this.
I need it. Give it to me.
It was basically that they're going to screw it up so badly that people are going to just sort of rationally conclude, okay, we got to try something different. I mean, when you're using the Centers for Disease Control to enforce a eviction moratorium, to suspend residential property rights, it's like, come on, it is so obviously out of whack. And it's also worth pointing out, and this has always been true about debt ceiling stuff, Americans have always been against raising it. Like, if public opinion research on this is pretty clear, and it's the same right now as it ever was. Of all of the reasons to shut down government or delay government or whatever, the debt ceiling is the one thing that Americans are like, yeah, maybe you should pause on just always raising that, because there's an intuitive sense that we're spending way too much money. We're getting, like, my bank account is getting $330 extra a month from the federal government. It doesn't need it. It wants it. Everyone wants the money. But, like, there's an intuitive sense of, and that's also borne out in the polling too. People like, yeah, it's great. I love the money, and they shouldn't be doing it. And Washington's like, that doesn't make any sense. It makes all the sense in the world. We can tell that stuff has gone off the rails.
Matt Welch, reason.com. Go read him. Matt, appreciate you.
Thank you.
Let's definitely do it again. Thank you, brother. There was talk about $1 trillion coin that they were going to mint and the former head of the mint said, we'll print $1 million coin, $1 trillion coin, and then voila, inflation won't increase. That's literally what he said. Voila, problem solved, inflation won't go up. We're out of our minds. Tomorrow, our big special, Blue State Survival Guide. How to live as a Christian in a post-Christian world, how to survive politically, and also from a business perspective. That's tomorrow's special. Spread the word.